Bible Worm, reading the Bible with Bible Worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia.
And I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, Professor of Religious Studies at Hendrix College and Theologian in Residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
This week we're reading John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11, the story of Jesus turning water into wine at a wedding, his first miraculous sign in the Gospel of John, and a rather unusual place to start. Jesus himself objects when his mother first suggests that he ought to take action when she sees that wine has run out. I mean, come on, the stakes here are just not that high. So the party-goers will be disappointed. So the host will be embarrassed. So, doesn't Jesus have bigger fish to fry? But in choosing to act, he brings a hospitality beyond our wildest imagination into the story. Now, if Jesus can overcome his hesitation to act, if he's willing to adjust the actual cosmic clock of the kingdom of heaven in the interest of hospitality, what exactly is it that holds us back from generosity? What might we be able to overcome? Thanks for being with us. Hey, Bobby, it is good to see you.
Hey, Amy, it is your birthday. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. It is my birthday.
What's going on your birthday so far?
Here is the gift I have received from the universe. It's like really a universe level of gift. There are maybe like 6 or so squirrels that have been putting on a circus for me outside my window.
Oh, squirrel circus.
For like probably 3 hours now. Like I pointed them out to my daughter before she left for school. I have taken pictures and videos. I have just sat and watched them.
That is amazing. Do they like swing on trapezes and walk on tight ropes and things like that? What?
I mean, if by a tightrope you mean like the phone wire.
Oh, yeah.
And like really thin branches, and they're like jumping from one tree to another. And they're just, I don't know, at some point I was like, maybe they're not playing, maybe they're fighting.
I love it when squirrels do that. Oh, no, they're definitely playing. If they're fighting, that will make me sad.
Yeah.
They're playing. They're entertaining you on your birthday. It's beautiful.
I know. Yeah.
The most exciting thing in my world right now is that on our Zoom call right now, your picture is lagging behind your words a little bit. So I can hear you speaking in my head through my headphones without your mouth moving. And it's like we have a telekinetic interaction. It's like I know what that feels like now. I can just hear your voice in my mind.
So what if you were to interpret that as some kind of gift to you from the universe?
It is a gift to me from the Zoomiverse.
For underscores, I don't know what.
Yeah.
The shared consciousness of all human beings.
Yeah.
Or
I love
all
that.
beings. Yeah.
I love that.
Great.
Well, our text today is also about undeserved gifts.
Undeserved gifts and also like life cycle celebrations.
It's true. It is true.
Yes, there are many connections. Today we get to read about a wedding. Always exciting. Celebrate a wedding. We are in John chapter 2, just the first part of it, verses 1 through 11. We left off in the last chapter, so I don't think there's very much we need to say.
Let's just jump in today.
Let's just jump in. Okay, let's do it. I am reading from the NRSV. On the 3rd day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not come yet." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Already I have so many questions, which I guess is good. This is a short reading, but there's a lot
There's a lot to
that we
it.
can talk about in
Yes.
here. Yeah. So the first thing that stands out to me is just that you have been helping us notice along the way that John likes to give us timestamps.
Yes.
Time is passing in
Yes.
the Gospel of John. And so here we get on the third day. So on the one hand, we're just saying, okay, it was on the third day. It was 3 days after we got this description of Jesus bringing some other people coming into Jesus's disciple group.
Yes, that seems to be
right?
the third day. The last time marker we had was in 143, which is when Philip finds Nathanael and they have that whole interaction about the fig tree.
Okay, so maybe they've had like 3 days as a group of
Yes.
disciples. This is
Yes.
like the third day of their
Yeah.
friendhood.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there also is, the third day.
Yes.
Yes. Does anything else need to be said about that? Or does the
Yeah, I could
reader
talk about this forever.
understand?
Like I've been setting this up for 3 weeks.
Let's do it.
So, I mean, there's just a couple of things. One is like, Jesus has only known these guys for 3 days and he invites them to a wedding. Like that's like, don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like if I just met you and like, hey, what's up? Nice to meet you. You want to come to a family wedding with me? That would be unusual. So anyway, I just think that's kind of funny that Jesus does that.
Well, the NRSV doesn't make it sound like he did. It says Jesus and his disciples had also been invited.
So they just happened to be invited to the same wedding? Maybe that's true. I read it as like Jesus got an invite and he just +6'd it or whatever.
That's why they ran out of wine.
Yeah. The other thing, Amy, so the third day, as you're noting, has clear resonances with another third day, which we'll see later in the Gospel of John, which is the resurrection on the third day. And so it might be preparing our minds a little bit to think about this text of the water into wine as a connection point to that third day. And so maybe we're supposed to be thinking about this moment in time in light of the crucifixion and resurrection, especially the resurrection and what that signifies. So I think, I'm always a little suspicious whenever Christians hear the number 3. They're either like, ooh, Trinity, or like, ooh, resurrection.
Yeah.
But I think in this case, maybe we're actually like this is supposed to tweak our ears in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing that I'm playing with though, Amy, that I have not seen in a commentary. I will say that my commentary work has not been exhaustive. And so maybe people do talk about this. But here's what I'm seeing in the text. The first day in our counting was the day that John had that interaction with the Pharisees. Then we get the next day in John 1:29, and then the next day in John 1:35, and then the next day in John 1:43. So that gets us to day 4. On the third day gets us to day 7. And so in my mind, we had that in the beginning was the Word, which took our minds to Genesis 1. And now here we are on the 7th day.
Oh, wow.
Now, I'm not suggesting that this is a Sabbath day in the proper sense of Sabbath day.
Yeah.
Because this would be I don't know.
You would not have a wedding on the Sabbath day.
Right.
That's not your point. Yeah.
But in the number of the counting from the beginning of this text until now, it is the 7th day. And so I have been playing with whether we could or should read a resonance with Sabbath into this text. You have thoughts about that?
It's so interesting because when you said that you can be a little hesitant when Christians hear 3, they automatically think, of all these different resonances. Right. I almost said, yeah, Jews do that with 7.
yeah. And then here I am doing it.
So I love the possibility of layering those two things on top of each other. I don't know if I would think of it as a day of rest so much as a day of like completion. Like there is something that is completed on the seventh day. Creation is completed, or it's like a number of wholeness.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
And really like how cool to think about layering those two numerical resonances on top of each other in the context of this story, which is about a Jewish person who comes into like the founding of a new way of being in the world. I think it's really cool.
What you're making me think about is, the resurrection is its own kind of completion and wholeness that now in the Christian belief, the Messianic age or the kingdom of heaven has come near in like a new way. And so connecting that back to this text of wholeness and completion on the Sabbath day is yet another connection between those two, not just the third day now, but also the seventh day. I like that way of thinking about it a lot.
Well, I feel like you have already maybe gestured in the direction of one way that we could think about the fact that what is being narrated here on this day of completion, the third day or the seventh day, well, the third day, you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
That it's a wedding.
Yes.
And so I wonder if before we start moving into the realm of like the many ways in which the wedding is symbolic on a cosmic level, or in the story of Jesus in particular, just talk to me about weddings. Like, is this just, it's not the same as saying they were at a birthday party.
Right.
How is it different?
One of the commentaries I was reading, I'm reading a couple of different commentaries. I think this was probably O'Day and Hyland that we've talked about before, talking about how this is like, this story is taking place in the normal framework of human life.
Yeah.
And partly I was like, yes, that is true. Weddings are things that humans do. And so this is just part of what it means to be human. But as I think you're gesturing to, it's not a regular part of being human. It's not like a birthday in that sense that it doesn't happen on an ongoing basis. It happens once. And so it is both ordinary in its connection to the living of a human life and also extraordinary in that it is sort of one of the most celebratory moments. You know, if you ask a person, what was the best day of your life? Oftentimes it will come back to something like the day I got married, the day my kids were born, like those kinds of normal things, but that are like exceptional in their normalcy. And so I think there's a little bit of a tension here, not a tension, but like it's capturing both of the ordinary human and extraordinary moment. What do you think about that?
I love that. And I had some notes that sort of gestured in that direction, and you just said it so much more eloquently than I would have. I think another difference that I see between a party that would be like a birthday and a wedding is that like a wedding is really creating a new reality in a way. And it is a new social reality that
that's so important.
Matters very much for the community who's there. Like for a lot of society is built on the idea that like people are going to marry each other.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're going to form units in that way. Like that's just how that society was built. And I think it's the kind of thing that it's not just the joining of two people. Two people can't do it. I mean, in Jewish tradition, you can't do it on your own. You have to have witnesses.
Yes.
It's not only two people who are affected. It's not like it's sort of focused on two people, but it's really communal.
I love that.
It's really communal in a way. And the witnesses have an active role. Like they're not, the people at a wedding are not the audience who are like, yay, you. I feel like the most powerful weddings I've been at, both Jewish and Christian, has been when there's been a real charge from the officiant, like, okay, y'all, like you are now in it with them.
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
You know, like you're going to be their support team. Life is hard and marriage is hard and they're going to need you.
Yeah, I love that. I also really appreciate what you're saying there about the wedding isn't actually a wedding if there aren't any witnesses. Like even just legally, you have to have people sign the wedding certificate. And so they are necessary to the thing. Yeah, and invested in it too. I love that.
You mentioned before, you know, maybe if we're thinking of this in terms of like the trajectory of Jesus's life, that it's helpful also to think about the wedding being on the third day. Like, do you want to draw that out more here? Like the idea of some kind of the use of marriage or weddings as a framework in the story of Jesus. I think that you mentioned, or maybe this question was just already in my head, the idea of like Jesus as the bridegroom to Israel, I guess. I don't know. Humanity is a thing.
It is.
There you go. It's a thing. And I know in some gospels, I honestly can't remember if it's John or other gospels, there are other stories of weddings where, I don't know, I feel like the particularity of wedding, of like forming a new covenant, of a new kind of partnership, a new reality social cosmic reality is in some way gesturing towards the bigger story of Jesus's life. And I wonder if it's something you would bring in here.
You know, the story that's coming to mind, there's two places. One is the Gospel of Matthew. There's that parable of the bridesmaids, and the bridegroom in that parable seems to be Jesus. And so they are depicted as the bridegroom. You also get that image in the book of Revelation about the church as the bride of Christ. And so there's that image of the marriage. I would have to go and look back in John, but my quick thought is that John doesn't actually use that language. He's not interested in that image. And one of the things that's making me think about is that in this text, Jesus is not being related to the bridegroom here, but he is being thought of as sort of taking the place of the host, as we will see, the one who provides the wine for the wedding. And so it's interesting that he's not the one who is sort of creating the new reality or like being invested in it, but the one who's hosting it and making it like rich and plentiful and generative. And so I wonder, like, instead of like Jesus being part of the marriage, Jesus is the context for the marriage or something like that, maybe is where this takes me.
I love that. Gosh, I can't believe I'm still in the first verse. But then the text tells us the mother of Jesus, who is not named here.
Never named in the Gospel of John, actually.
Never named in the Gospel of John. It's fascinating.
I still call her Mary, though. I have to really struggle to call her the mother of Jesus.
I can understand
because I don't want
that.
to import anything into John, but
yeah,
it's just, such a tradition.
Yeah. So we're told there's a wedding and the mother of Jesus was there. We're told that before even we know that Jesus and his disciples were there.
Oh, yeah.
So it's almost like I read the first verse and I'm like, is the point of this story going to be the wedding, or is the point of this story going to be Jesus's mother's in town?
Yeah, the role of the mother in this text is really, she is not the point of the story, as you well know. Jesus is in some way the point of the story, but her presence is really highlighted in this first part.
Yes.
In an important way. But I don't know exactly in what way, way that's
so important. So maybe that's a question we can kind of hold, and I don't know, maybe at the end we'll come back to it, because I agree with you. Like it's really fronted.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll hold on that question.
Yes.
And see kind of how it plays out. So she says to him, she does not say, go fix this wine situation.
She doesn't.
She says, she makes an observation.
Yes.
They have no wine.
Yes.
And Jesus's response to her feels very sharp to me. Both in calling her woman and sort of saying like, I feel like saying like, this is not my problem.
Yeah.
It's not our problem and it's not my problem. Will you just talk to me a little bit about how you hold the tone of his response?
So, in the Greek, what he literally says is, what's that to me and you, woman? So it is dismissive in that sense. Like, this is not my problem. This is not your problem. Like, why are we meddling around in other people's business? The address of her as woman there, gunai in the Greek, is unusual, but the commentators that I've been looking at say you shouldn't necessarily read it as like rude. Jesus elsewhere calls her woman. He calls the woman at the well woman. Like, there's some places where Jesus uses this address, but it's a little, you said it a little sharp or a little uncomfortable or something. Like it is unusual, but I don't think it's like a backhanded, like, get out of here, you. And the reason why he does that is not entirely clear. I mean, a lot of the commentaries will say, like, the point is Jesus is not responding to this situation because his mom told him to. And so here, this is sort of like a distancing. And I think that I am persuaded by that, so that the point is becomes that Jesus responds to the situation once his attention has been called to it because he wants to respond to it and not because he feels some kind of familial
not in deference
obligation.
to his mom.
Does that help satisfy the question?
I can do something with that.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah, it's difficult in the translation because, like that would be a very discourteous thing to say in English.
I mean, if your kid said that to you, like, what's that to you, woman? You would be like, go to your room. Even though you're 18.
It's so funny because, like, part of me was like, teens, I mean, my teens better not call me woman, but I feel like they're, sometimes we accept my parenting friends and I a certain amount of sass from our teenagers.
Yeah.
Because we understand it as like it is a period of time where they do need to create distance and they are creating distance. But it was a little shocking to me in the context of the ancient world.
Yeah. Where
I guess in my imagining, people are respectful of their mother and father for the 10 Commandments.
We get that story in Luke's gospel that we talked about last year where the young Jesus is differentiating himself from his family and he stays in the temple. Right. And we talked about that. You're making me think that we could also read this story that way. I mean, it's at a different point in his life, I think. We imagine maybe he's around the age of 30 or something right here. But he is sort of going in this moment from, I am your kid who's part of your family, to now I'm going to start acting like the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Like, we're at that. And so that idea of differentiation here, I think, also makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. No, I think that's helpful.
This has nothing to do with anything, but you were reminding me, that Bob Marley song, No Woman, No Cry?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Which I think is about like, hey, woman, don't cry. It's going to be okay. But one of my good friends in college, he thought the song was like, no woman, no cry. like talking to him. Like, you don't have a girlfriend? It's okay.
It's no problem. Don't cry. You'll be fine.
That has nothing to do with this text, but it makes me laugh.
That's great.
No woman, no cry.
Okay, let's see. So I want to dig a little bit into Jesus's response, not the tone of it necessarily, but first of all, here's an impossible question. What do you think his mother means by saying they have no wine? Is that sort of like I could imagine being at a wedding and seeing they've run out of wine and just saying to my family who's sitting with me like,
time to go.
Okay. So there could be a lot of different tones about it. It could be, the jug's up, so let's go home. Or sort of sympathetic. Like, oh, poor guys, or judgmental. I don't mean to import that into this, or the way Jesus seems to have heard it, which is like you kind of grab their arm and squeeze a little bit, like they have no wine.
Yeah.
Like, and we need to hold that.
Yeah.
We need to hold the emotional reality of that with them. Like we are part of this wedding as the witnesses. Yeah. And so we are implicated in the fact that there's no, I don't know, like feeling the stress of that.
I love that way of reading it, Amy. That, the issue here is that this is a social faux pas, and it would be very embarrassing for the host to run out of wine. And whether we think of the host as the bridegroom, there's some conversation about, is the bridegroom the host, or is it the family, or is this a problem for the steward or whoever that's in charge of the wedding? I don't know exactly. Maybe we can talk about that in a bit. But the issue is this is going to be embarrassing for them. And I love that way that you're reading that, what she says to him as they're out of wine, which is not exactly a request.
It's
like, I've always read this as like the mother says to Jesus, like, you need to get some wine for them.
Right.
But I love that way of reading it, of she's just telling him like, oh my goodness, this is a problem. They're going to be so embarrassed. Yeah. And that all she's done is say that to him.
Yeah.
I love that way of reading it.
I mean, so then I think my associated question is, is she expecting him to do something about it? Like, what does she know about him? He responds to her as though she has asked him to do something.
Yeah.
It's unclear to me what she would have expected him to do. I mean, I don't know if she knows anything about the unusual nature of her son.
Yeah.
Or whether she's saying, run home and get the wine we have, or I don't know. There's like a whole bunch of questions sort of in there.
I mean, in this moment, there's no request, but when you look forward in verse 5, she says to the servants, do whatever he tells you.
That's right.
Which suggests that she thinks he's going to do something.
Yeah. That's
and
right.
I don't know whether he's a miracle baby. I mean, he's not a baby, but a miracle man who can make wine, or whether he's going to run out. He's going to send you out to the corner market.
He's going to go knock on doors and tell people in the neighborhood that they need to contribute wine or whatever.
We get no backstory, as you well know, in the Gospel of John. And so there's no virgin birth. There's no story of Jesus growing up. There's no story of an announcement to Mary. We have no idea what she does or does not know unless we import it from one of the other Gospels, which, we try not to do because John has not felt it necessary. And so maybe she knows that he's the Word made flesh and that he could do something about this. And maybe she's just saying, you're my son, like, what can be done? And so he receives it seems like, as she's asking him to do. Like, otherwise, the my time hasn't come yet doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So he receives it as she has placed some sort of obligation. But I don't know whether she knows he can do this kind of miracle or not. What do you think about that?
I don't know what she thinks, but I think part of my way of, like, my emotional understanding of what still feels to me a little bit like a harsh pushback from Jesus is, like, I imagine there is some tension that he feels, whether his mom wants him to feel it or not, with the fact that, like, he knows he can solve this problem.
Right.
He feels that he shouldn't solve this problem because of reasons.
Yes.
Because if he really couldn't do anything about it, you could just be sympathetic in response to that. Like, you could just say, like, oh man, that sucks so hard. It's really like, oh man, I really feel for them.
Yeah.
And be done with it. And it just made me think about like real world situations where a situation is brought to our attention that when I truly can't do anything about it, I have a softer response. It's when I know that I can do something, but I, for whatever reason, feel that I can't because it's too hard or it's too expensive, or, as Jesus says in this case, like, it's not the right time. Yeah. This is not the way it's supposed to go in my timeline. Like, things don't line up. And that leads, I don't know, like, that tension can really create a sharpness that doesn't have to be there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just makes me think about what is going on in Jesus's own self.
Yeah. The first thing I will say in response to that is that the leaf blowers have started up just outside my window here at Hendrix College. And so if that's annoying, I apologize. What you're saying there is so helpful to me, in the sense of, I experience this like every week when I go to Canvas Community. And, like this past Sunday, there's a guy that I take back to his outdoor camp every Sunday after church. And like, he's going to be cold out there. And I could do something about that, but I'm not going to do something about it because it doesn't make sense for me in the big picture. Or at least that's what I think. And he never asks me to do anything. Mm-hmm. But I still feel it anyway. Like, I feel the obligation that I'm rejecting, even though there's never been any request. I like that way of thinking about what's happening here in this text.
If your mom were next to you and said, he's going to be cold
he's
tonight.
Going to be cold tonight. What do you want me to do about that, woman?
Yeah, exactly. It would really press you into some discomfort. Do you want to, okay, so I want to take Jesus' response seriously. This is not the time. Will you make a case for me that it is the time?
Who am I to contradict Jesus?
I mean, Jesus does act.
Yes.
So Jesus decides it is the time. But like, it's a random wedding. It's unhappy, but it's not that unhappy that they've run out of wine.
Yeah.
What, why should this be the moment when Jesus takes a step toward his power in the world?
That's such a good question. I love the way you phrase that. Can I ask you just first, in the NRSV, what is the NRSV's phrasing there that he says?
He says, "My hour has not yet come."
Yeah. So that phrasing is important. The CEB doesn't quite get it. The CEB just says, "My time hasn't come yet." But the language there of hour gets used in a couple of different ways in the Gospel of John and in first century Judaism. In the Gospel of John, it's most often associated with Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
So that event becomes my hour, and this is not yet that. Mm-hmm. The way it also gets used is my hour, or the hour is coming, is a more general reference to the inbreaking of the Messianic age, the shift of times in a cosmic sense. And, for John, those two, in first century Judaism, those things are related.
Mm-hmm.
And so one way of reading this is Jesus is saying, woodenly speaking, like, my crucifixion and resurrection, which is supposed to be the inbreaking of the kingdom, has not yet come.
Yes.
And so then that is shifting backwards the inbreaking of the kingdom to this moment, which is not connected to his crucifixion and resurrection.
That's right.
Which is a really interesting, like, now there's been a separation that may or may not have been intended, that the kingdom actually inbreaks separate from the resurrection.
Yeah. No, I could totally see that. And so why does he act? Like, that's a big deal to decide, okay, at this wedding, for this occasion where it's not that they had no wine. It's not that they couldn't say the blessing. It's not that they, but they've run out of wine, and he does act.
I love the way you're thinking about that, Amy. And, we got that language in the prologue to the Gospel of John about, from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace, in verse 116. And that idea that, like, God in Jesus just overflows with gracefulness, graciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a version of that. Like, this is an unexpected and, in some sense, unnecessary act of grace. And it comes at an inopportune moment, and it sort of shifts the dynamic so that the incarnation of Jesus in the world is now, which the prologue was anticipating, but the arrival of Jesus in the world is in itself the arrival of the kingdom of heaven, and not just in some future moment. And to read it as like an act of graciousness, I think, is really helpful to me. Would you go somewhere else or other?
I think that I don't know that it's somewhere else. I think that I'm really drawn to sort of that first tension that you spoke about, where, like, there is some kind of cosmic reality that is like a real reality. There's a, there's some kind of clock ticking somewhere that you can't just pretend it's not.
Yeah.
And also, here is Jesus embedded in the social world and community of his time, and the religious life of his community, and that, and is sort of implicated in the success of this marriage as a witness to it. And like there's a real tension there. And so it's not obvious to me what he should do, but the fact that he decides this way feels significant to me.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm going to do this thing kind of as quietly as I can, as we'll see.
I love that. Cosmic time has shifted off the cuff in an ordinary human moment for the celebration or the social standing of the host of this wedding. I love that.
Yeah. Okay, last question. His mom says to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you."
Yeah.
Do you read that as sort of knowing he's going to do something?
Yeah.
Or like a final way to press the issue? Or as really like just saying you make your decision, Jesus. Servants do whatever.
Yeah.
Like sort of reasserting trust in his whatever he decides to
Yeah. I like those options that you've given there, Amy. I can see a little bit of all of those in
do.
there.
Yeah.
I read this a little bit as she knows him and she knows that his first response there is probably not his last response there. That he is a person of grace upon grace. And even if she does not yet know who he is exactly, she knows that about him. And so I read it as like, just see what comes next and trust what he says. And I can also see that there's a little bit of a press there, like she's
right. You
she's
might
not taking his
want the
no as
ball
no.
to be in your court, but the ball's in your court. So you can say no to this, but yeah.
Which, Amy, is right along the lines, like when you think about like what lament psalms do, that's exactly what they kind of do, is the speaker of the psalm says, hey, God, like, I know you can do this. Kind of expect that you could. And then the end of the psalm is like, I'm going to praise you. So it's like, whatever happens next. And so this way of sort of pressing on Jesus gently has a long history in Hebrew scripture.
That's beautiful to think about it in the context of prayer and not the kind of prayer where you're like, here's my very specific ask in all of its detail. Yeah. But like, I have presented you the problem and I trust you.
Yes.
And you're going to do something.
Yes.
Whatever it is. Accept whatever it is that you're going to do.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
Hi, I'm Terry Peterson, minister of St. John's Church of Scotland in Gourock, west of Glasgow on the Scottish coast. And I am the liturgy writer for Bible Worm, which means I get to spend a lot of time listening to Bobby and Amy, and that is a great joy. It is fascinating to hear them read and talk through stories I thought I knew pretty well, since I'm starting my third time through the narrative lectionary now. I always come away with more ideas than I can fit into a liturgy or a sermon, and working with them has deepened my own spiritual life as I write liturgy that follows the contours of their conversations. I appreciate that they don't shy away from the difficult parts, and that they always find connections between these ancient texts and our contemporary life. And it's fun for me to work those connections into liturgy that empowers worshiping communities to speak to and about God in new ways. If you join the Bible Worm Patreon at the Liturgy Worm level or higher, you'll have access to those liturgies and prayers that you can use or adapt, as well as early access to the podcast. Or there are other levels with different benefits, including Bible studies, access to the Bible Worm Collaborative discussion group, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast to help Bobby and Amy continue creating this incredible resource for people of faith around the world. And now back to this week's podcast.
All right. Shall we see what it is he does?
I can't wait.
I can't wait. Okay. I'm picking up in verse 6. Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. All right. Jewish rites of purification.
Yeah, talk to me about that.
I think what they would be talking about here is hand washing, like ritual hand washing. a form of which still happens in the Jewish world
Yeah.
today. It's in a way, it's such a funny ritual to me because like generally people also wash their hands in a non-ritual way
Right.
before eating.
Yeah.
But then there is a specific blessing and way of washing hands that is also done in a Jewish context. That would be a lot of water for hand washing. 6 like they're not bathing in this water.
Yeah.
6 jugs of 20 or 30 gallons. This is a big wedding.
Yeah, I think it's important, the distinction that you're making, Amy, that this is probably hand washing water and not ritual bath water, which was typically collected from rainfall in the mikvah. And so like purification rituals related to that sort of cleansing of the sort of Levitical laws, those would have been done in this kind of mikvah context. And so these are jars that are used for this other kind of purification. I go back and forth about how important it is that they're there for ritual purification.
Mm-hmm,
Like some people will read that as
question.
like, oh, here's the purification.
Yeah.
That water is no longer necessary. It's now turned into wine for celebration. Here's like transition from Jewish ritual purity to like something else. Like Jesus has abrogated purification laws. Like, I don't think any of that's in this text. I think it's just saying what you're saying, which is there's a lot of people at this wedding.
There. Yeah, there's a lot of people there at the wedding, and
they needed a lot of water.
Yeah. And this is, it's so challenging with these stories to know what to read more into because, as we said, like this is a setting in real life. And so if it's actually at a wedding, like what would have been there as the big vessels to put wine in? That's what would have been there.
And then this idea of like 20 or 30 gallons each, and there's 6 of them.
I know. I was like, how did they even fill those things? I guess they've had a way.
Like, that's a lot of wine. One of the commentaries I was reading calculated out that it's like 1,000 bottles of wine or something.
Oh my!
Like this is more wine than you need probably for a wedding.
Yeah.
So part of it's just that abundance, and part of it's like, why was there water there?
Right.
I don't want to read too far into the like purification stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bobby, I'm going to do the great courtesy of not asking you why Jesus can't just put wine in the empty vessels instead of making the people fill them with water first, because that sounds like such an annoying chore. I'm not going to ask you that.
That's such a good thing to not ask me, though. And so if I were not going to answer, I would not answer that. It's making me think about Ezekiel and the fact that God
I should have asked you
Ezekiel to prophesy to the bones when God could have just resurrected those bones. And maybe there's something here about needing to do that labor, and the fact that they did the labor is what's going to let them know secretly that Jesus turned the water into wine later. That's what I would not say if you had not asked me that question.
Oh man, now I wish I had asked you that question, but I guess I did ask you the question. Yeah, I mean, I think both things that you said. One is just that having the people do what they can do.
Yeah.
Like, what is the thing you can do? There's part of this you can't do, fine, but you have to go as far as you can. That's what this partnership is. Yeah. And then, as you said, like every good magician knows, like if you have to, I mean that, lightly, you have to let people be as involved as they can so they can be more clear about the miracle that has actually occurred.
Yeah.
It's also making me think, Bobby, the fact that it has to be water first, about that reading that we did. I think it was a reading in Isaiah where I couldn't say the word beyond. I still can't say it.
Yeah.
And you suggested it was Vienna sausages.
Yeah.
You remember that reading?
I do.
So first there was water that people were going to be able to have water and food without paying for it.
Uh-huh.
So like this most essential need for our bodies as God made them, you can have. And then it went further. It said like, but not just water, also milk and wine. Like there's survival and also satiation and joy.
I love that.
And so turning the water into wine, I don't know. It's making me think of Isaiah.
I love that connection, Amy. And, there's also some other connections probably to wine in the Hebrew Bible. The ones I'm thinking about, one is also in Isaiah, which is anticipating I don't know if it's the Messianic time, properly speaking, but the the change of the times in Isaiah 25. And it says, the Lord of heavenly forces will prepare a feast of choice wines, of select foods, of choice wines, well refined. It's Isaiah 25:6. Or in Amos, the mountains will drip wine and all the hills will flow with it. And so there is this sense of the plentifulness, not just what is necessary, but also what is enjoyable, as you're pointing to, but also the fact of wine is a sort of image of the messianic age, or the time when God's reign is fully realized. And those are connected, right? So in the reign of God, it's not just that you will have what you need to survive, but you will have wine flowing down the mountains.
Yeah.
And so here is Jesus kind of enacting that in a more localized sense, but nonetheless, that's what is happening here.
But that really sort of points back to the real abundance that you spoke about before.
Yeah.
Like, this is not just enough wine.
Yeah, it
This
is more
really
than you need, for sure.
More than you need. Yeah. But also still in a pretty quiet way. Like, it's just in these vessels that are, they're not clear vessels. We were not working with glass here. So no one saw the moment when water turned to wine. It's a little bit of a quiet, the text goes out of our way to say that the steward doesn't know where the wine came from.
Yeah.
Only the servants know.
I love that, Amy. And, that's such an interesting first miracle. Like, if Jesus wanted people to know, like, he could have, done the miracle of walking on water or feeding the 5,000 with bread from heaven or whatever. And instead, at the end of this text, we have a miracle that nobody knows happened except the servants who got the water and the disciples who see it and know, and presumably Jesus' mother. And so it's a quiet miracle. It's in a sense, from the perspective of everyone else, it's not even really a miracle. Like, what the way it gets interpreted is, what an amazing wedding that the bridegroom saved the best wine for last. And so he gets the glory for it. And Jesus is only the people who know what Jesus did give Jesus any glory. So interesting.
It makes me wonder, especially what I think it's very interesting that we get no insight into what the servants are thinking.
Yeah.
Here.
We just know that they knew.
We just know that they knew. There's someone, there was a bar mitzvah in our synagogue a couple weeks ago, and the parent of the bar mitzvah was talking about how, for her, part of what was so wonderful about the whole process was that she kept saying, like, it's just shul. Shul is the Yiddish word for synagogue. Meaning sort of like, yes, it's a special occasion. And also, it kind of happens every week.
Yeah.
And, for their family, like, they come regularly. And so there wasn't this sort of like, this is a totally other experience that's like outside the norm. It was just sort of an amped up version of what's normal, which is already sort of a beautiful sentiment. But then she ended it by saying that often, right on the other side of the word just, when you say it's just shul, it's just wine, it's just whatever it is, there's some miracle in it. Like, the very fact that we can say it's no big deal is itself the miracle.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, it makes me think, because it's so tempting to say, like, it's just a wedding. It's just some random dude's wedding. Like, but that goes back to sort of, again, where you started us in that, not quite tension, but the fact that it's a special occasion, but it's very much embedded in just the normal life of the community. And that's where Jesus does his first sign.
Yeah.
Is very much in it's just a wedding. And there should be a miracle in it.
Amy, I was probably going to say this later, but what you're reminding me of is we had a conversation about ordinary miracles earlier this year.
Yeah.
And it was in the manna text in Exodus 16.
I remember.
And one of the interesting things in that text, in Exodus 16:7, God says to Moses, when they see the manna on the ground in the morning, they will see the Lord's glorious presence. And so the sign of God's glorious presence is going to be that manna that's on the ground.
Mhm.
And you well remember that story when the people go out and they see it and it's like dew on the ground and like they can eat it. They're
What's
like,
that?
what is it? And so it's like this kind of, it's not mundane because it's like feeding them, but it feels, and then it comes to feel very ordinary to them over time,
Yeah.
like you're saying. And here we get in verse 11, he revealed his glory. And so this, like that, the glorious presence of the Lord in Exodus 16 and the glory of Jesus in John 2 are connected to each other. And they're both in these sort of mundane miracle kind of ways, like miracles that you might not actually even realize were miraculous.
Mhm.
And they're also connected in this sense of like overabundance. That's not overabundance. It is in that Exodus text, it's enoughness. Here, it's more than enoughness.
Yeah.
And they're both related to bread and wine, like human sustenance. And so the glory here and the glory there, I feel like there's a real resonance between these two texts.
Yeah. Bobby, when the steward says, "You have kept the good wine until now,"
Yeah.
that feels like a very loaded. I don't know. I imported a lot of like potential symbolic reading onto that. And I wonder if you do, or
I'm so curious what symbolic reading you saw in there.
I mean, I guess I wonder like if I'm reading this, you know, sort of in the context of the Christian story as I know it, that there has been this whole long life and relationship between Israel and God. And now, you know, they're thousands of years into that. And the Jesus story is here. I guess I see it as a way of saying like, this is the good part. Only this is now, like this is the good part or a good part or, you know, something like that happening so far into this story.
So are you reading it a little bit in a supersessionistic kind of way? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
What I wrote down was, is Jesus the good wine?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that is a right way to read this. I would back up one step and say that what this text is saying is the messianic age is the good wine. And for the Gospel of John, that means Jesus is the good wine. But within a Jewish tradition, I think, wouldn't you agree that the messianic age portends some better way where all the wine is good all the time?
Yeah.
There's plenty of bread.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
So I don't think it's exactly that now the previous part has had no value. It's just that there is a fulfillment coming and this is it in that sort of symbolic sense.
No, that's helpful to think about it in terms of sort of a broader messianic story where like the thing to come is going to be even better, like better than your wildest dreams kind of thing. It's not that we didn't peak already.
Yeah. But now you're getting a little foretaste of it. Like the wine at this wedding is not the abundant wine of the kingdom of heaven. The wine at this wedding is the wine at this wedding, but it's exactly a foretaste. You can get a little sense of it right now about what that's going to be like because the kingdom of heaven is present in Jesus in the Gospel of John. The other way of reading that, or another way of reading it is, I mean, this is more mundane way of reading it, but you know, the head waiter or whatever we want to call him is talking about a social protocol in the Roman world where you serve good wine until people get drunk and then you serve bad wine.
I mean, I think that's not just in the Roman world. Like, I think people still do, I'm not kidding. I think people still do that at parties because you don't, you know, once you've had enough, you don't really pay attention.
Yeah, you don't care anymore.
No.
And so it's this sort of interesting thing. I mean, like what it was reminding me of is like in the way of empire or the way of late stage capitalism or however you want to talk about it. Like we make things so you get really excited about them early on. And then later, when it's too late to do anything about it, we don't care so much. So we like make products that are like really fancy, but then they only have a 3-year useful life or whatever. Like we offer the good stuff up front and then behind there is something of lesser value. And this is saying, you know, that's what he expects because he's part of the Roman culture. And what we get is a contrast to that, which is in the presence of the kingdom of heaven, it's all good all the time. Like all the wine is good. And so like, I just think that's a nice contrast between like the way the empire works, which everything is kind of planned out to give maximum advantage to the host or whatever.
Yeah.
And the kingdom of heaven, in which it is just abundance and goodness, and the very hills are flowing with wine.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a resonance here in this text.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Amy, I was talking earlier about, you were asking me about Jesus as a bridegroom, and I responded by saying Jesus is a host. And so here's where we start to see, like, Jesus here has performed the role of a host, which is to provide the good wine for the wedding. And so he has moved from being a guest at this wedding to being the host of this wedding, but nobody knows it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know exactly where that goes. We're going to see that theme come back. Like the one that's coming to my head right now is when Jesus is going to wash the disciples' feet in John chapter, wherever that is, 13, 12, somewhere right there. And he is both the host who offers to have their feet washed and the slave who washes the feet. And so we get in the Gospel of John this kind of playing around with the idea of host, but Jesus is a host in a way that's not the one who gets the credit. Like the actual host of this wedding gets the credit, but Jesus is the one who actually is hosting right now. And so there's just an interesting dynamic that we start to see here about Jesus as the context in which great things happen, but not necessarily the one who needs credit for that, at least broadly speaking. His disciples get it. Maybe the servants get it. Maybe his mom gets it.
Yeah.
But everybody else just thinks, wow, this host is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it has me thinking too, maybe this is my own hope since I'm such a terrible host, but that, you know, this sort of social pressure to, or I don't know, maybe pressure is not the right word. The fact that a host gets the credit or the blame for how successful a celebration is.
Yeah.
I feel like it doesn't have to be that way. Like if there's something genuinely worth celebrating for the community and someone's convening a gathering, if everyone is helping to make the gathering joyful, like isn't that just so much better? So I guess you're right, for sure. Jesus does not take any of the glory here, and the glory winds up going to the host. And it also, for me, is a little bit of a suggestion that like that whole social norm is, I mean, it is what it is. It is of our social universe, but it's kind of not the point.
Yeah. I love that, Amy, because I'm forever saying this to my students in classes when they're like, this class isn't going great. And I'm like, yeah, like you need to bring it a little more. Yeah. And, I think the same way, like the way that we do church at Canvas Community is like, everybody comes and we talk about a text, and, I try to create space for people to share, but if they just don't have anything to bring, then that's just going to be the way it is. Right. And I like that idea of like those things require the community. And maybe this message here too is not everything's on the host, but it requires the community to step up.
Well, Bobby, this is quite a great story and a famous one. And I wonder, as you read it this time around at this moment in your life, how it is speaking to you.
Amy, what this text is speaking to me today is about the verse from the prologue about grace upon grace, and that, the arrival of Jesus in the world is evidence of God's grace upon grace toward humankind. And I think this text is at one level about that. So here we have, 150 gallons of wine, 1,000 bottles of wine at a wedding, and it is unnecessarily good. And the generosity that's evident here is abundant. Also, the downplaying, as we're saying, of Jesus's role in the miracle, the kind of like, it's just about there is there is plenty and there is enjoyment and there is celebration. And it doesn't always have to point, its only function doesn't have to be to point to Jesus, but it is just as it is. And so in that sense, I think it's a really lovely kind of portending of the kingdom of heaven and like what the arrival of the reign of God is, where there is celebration and plenty and community, and the good just keeps being good, and the generosity of God continues to be the generosity of God. So I think that's really lovely. What we're then also saying about, but this isn't that. This is a wedding at Cana. And it is sort of a weird moment for the revealing of the kingdom of heaven. And so I like thinking about that too. Like, yeah, the kingdom of heaven is going to be great. And also, it is instantiated here in this random wedding in Cana by a crisis that is just a crisis that was because somebody didn't buy enough wine. And suddenly there's evidence of the kingdom of heaven. And I like to think that so too it is here and now, that there is evidence of the kingdom of heaven inbreaking in these moments of celebration and these moments of community and these moments of plenty all the time on the everyday. It's just shul. It's just church. But here it is. And not everybody at this wedding has eyes to see it, but the people who have the eyes to see it, they really get it. And the disciples, this is the sign they needed, and now they believe and they trust in Jesus. And so I think this text is an invitation not only to think about the generosity of God that is going to be manifest in the Messianic age, but also about the generosity of God that's manifest here and now in our communities, and that we can participate in, and that we can contribute to, and that we can see if we have eyes to see it. I just think it's such a beautiful text about generosity and goodness and hopefulness all wrapped up in one.
I love it. Yeah, it's all around us in our just normal places.
What about you, Amy? What are you seeing in this text?
I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but I am still thinking about sort of the model of like discipleship, like what it is for this group of disciples to have Jesus as a teacher. And not as a teacher that like they sit at his feet from 2:00 to 4:00 every day and like take notes about what Jesus says.
Right.
The kind of teacher that you just spend as much time in their presence as you can and watch how they move through the world. And sometimes they will stop and tell you things.
Yes.
And you get to see them at good moments, and you get to see them at moments that they probably wish you didn't see them. And you get, like, you just see the way that they interact with life as it actually, is presented to them. So I'm thinking about the disciples in this story and what they learned.
Yeah.
In addition to the fact that, yes, okay, this guy's for real. Like he can, there's that.
Yeah.
Okay. But what they learned that they can apply, because they can't necessarily do that thing. And so one thing is, we've talked about a lot of these things, but one thing that's on my mind is Jesus did not immediately want to do this thing.
Yeah.
And we could argue was a little bit grumpy about the suggestion that he ought to do the thing.
Yeah.
And there was a reason that he felt he shouldn't do the thing. And he decided to do the thing.
Yeah.
So I feel like within that, there is a flexibility and a sort of, I don't know, open-heartedness, even if you've been a little bit, even if you felt closed to an idea initially, to say like, well, let me reconsider, does this situation actually call for a different kind of action?
Yeah.
I think sometimes in my own life, once I have that initial harsh response, I feel like I have to stick to that then because I already said the thing. And then, to be like consistent. I don't know. Jesus is kind of in a weird position here and makes the best decision that I can. But I think what feels most striking to me about it right now is his willingness to change his mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing for students to see their teacher do.
Yeah.
And something that we can all do. Even
Yeah.
if we can't, even if we can't do
Yeah.
the kinds of things that Jesus can do in this story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that, Amy. And, the other thing that's an extension of what you just said is that the reason Jesus gives is a cosmic theological reason.
It's a really good reason.
It is not yet my hour. And so
Yeah.
not just like when I have a response, like I can change my mind, I think that's really important. But there's all sorts of times when people don't do something or are upset about something or are inflexible about something because of a divine reason, or at least the way they perceive it.
Yeah.
And this is Jesus saying, look, even if the reason is a divine reason, and even if the thing that you're doing is just making some wine for a wedding, which doesn't seem that important in the cosmic scale, like there is some flexibility. And so it might be an invitation to consider hospitality and invitation as a possible way of like changing some things that we hold to be
Mm-hmm.
cosmic truths.
Yeah. I think that's right. Well, next week we skip a whole verse and we pick up in verse 13 of chapter 2. We'll read to the end of the chapter. I think it's a story about the temple. We'll see what happens.
Just in the interest of not skipping a verse, I'm just going to say, it says, after this, Jesus and his mother, his brothers, and his disciples went down to Capernaum and stayed there for a few days. So now you know.
Now you know. Great.
Amy, thanks for this conversation. I'm looking forward to talking to you about the next one.
Me too. Be well. I'll see you soon.
All right. See you then.
Bye.
Happy birthday.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us to keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for details.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all our Patreon supporters for helping us make this podcast possible.
Join us again next week when we continue with John chapter 2, verses 13 to 25. Until then, keep on digging.